you know, when you set yourself up for something really cool and big and you're excited about, let's say, like, I don't know, birthday party you're throwing and something happens and it goes wrong and then you're just like so defeated because it didn't go the way you wanted to. That's how, when I think back to Boston, that's exactly how I feel. It's ripped off.
Hey friend, welcome to the Feminine Initiate podcast. I'm your host, Jess West. You're here because you're an online coach, creative, visionary, or aspiring entrepreneur ready to do the thing while gaining clarity, empowerment, and deep fulfillment along the journey. Together, we're going to explore balancing our feminine and masculine energies. Think imagination meets structure, and limitless opportunity meets clarity of purpose. We're also going to overcome the fears that keep us playing small and break free from scarcity mindsets, all the while reconnecting with our authentic selves. Are you ready to manifest the feminine way? Me too. Let's do it. Hello there, and welcome back to the podcast. I hope you're having an amazing day so far. Today's conversation that I'm about to share with you is absolutely incredible, so we're going to get right into it. My guest is Natalie Lehto. She's a certified kinesiologist and endurance athlete. She owns and operates Within You, which is a fitness center and lifestyle studio in her hometown of Thunder Bay, Ontario. This is where she lives with her husband Andrew and her 3 children, Sophie, Cloé, and Lucas. Natalie wrote and published her first novel, Like the Glide of a Dragonfly, that we talk about today, which is a story of healing and finishing strong after surviving the Boston Marathon bombing. Natalie shares parts of her entrepreneurship journey with us today, as well as shares some of her experience at the Boston Marathon. It's both an emotional conversation, yet uplifting and inspirational, and I know you're going to get so much out of it. And so without any further ado, let's dive in. Please help me welcome Natalie Lehto. Hey, Natalie, welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited to have you here today. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to getting into your incredible story. I know you have, oh my gosh, such an experience to share with us and so many insights from that. Before we get into your story, though, I'd love for you to share your business journey with us. So you have the business Within You, which is a fitness and lifestyle coaching business. Can you give us the background as to how you started that business and what, I really love the name Within You. And so what got you interested in
Mhm.
lifestyle and fitness coaching?
It's a little bit of a long journey of how I got here. When I was younger, theater was my thing. I wanted to be an actress and I wanted to take the road of being, going to Hollywood or wherever that took me. Um, as I was kind of dabbling in the theater world, I also grew up with parents that always had health and wellness kind of around our family. It was never very structured, it was just what we did. So having those two worlds, when I got closer to the end of high school and I needed to decide where and what I was going to do, my grandmother actually calmly said to me one day, "So, yeah, you want to be an actress. That's great. But do you have a plan B?" And I was like, "No, there's no plan B. This is all I want to do." And during that time, I was also into starting to smoke cigarettes, starting to dabble in too much drinking, chewing tobacco, maybe trying things I shouldn't be doing, and taking a road that I knew didn't feel good. So, with my grandma's comment and that journey I was on, it was just at the right moment when I started thinking, okay, well, yeah, maybe I should have a plan B. What feels good? And without giving you 2 hours of an explanation, at the very same time, I think my dad was gently pulling me into a direction of like making healthy choices, taking me to the gym, even though I spent the whole night partying the night before, wake up, go to the gym. And there was this like, this lifestyle that was started to slowly creep in. Um, and then I just knew in my gut that this feels better to me. Waking up and going to the gym with my dad felt better than the other choices I were making. So when it came to actually filling out my university applications, I was like, okay, well, I'm really loving this, like this healthy and fitness side of things. What could I do? So I actually went to university for kinesiology. I continued a little bit of the drama field, doing some, dramatic arts throughout my university career as well. But I just started to really love how I felt moving and doing exercising. And then I found running, and then it just like literally took off from there. Um, and then without actually having a real plan, I started working out at a gym. And a lady approached me one day and she said, you know, can you help my mom work out? She's like in her 70s and she's not sure what to do. And I kind of looked at her and said, I have zero training. I just do this for myself. Anyways, that was the beginning of me becoming a trainer. And I loved it because I could help other people find their way, however that looked. I could help other people, work towards little goals, big goals, and it just sort of morphed. And then I realized for me, my dad had always instilled in me, find what you love and the money will come. Do what you love so that every day you go to work, it's not a chore. So all of these little lessons pulled together just became, well, okay, one, I love helping others with fitness. I love fitness. It's really who I am, what I do, how I live. And then I also want to work for myself. So there was like so many pieces to the pie that like came together to like create my own business. Within You, the actual name, was kind of simple for me because everybody can discover their own potential and it's all within us. And to me, that was as simple as that is how can I help others help them in discovering their full potentials? That's a long-winded answer to your question.
Yeah, I absolutely love the way that you answered it because it really does show how dynamic our lives are and the decisions that we make and like all of the pieces that came together to have the business that you have today. And I really do think that it's so beautiful that um like just the kind of like the family that you I guess kind of grew up in and with your dad saying like do what you love and the money will come. I don't feel like too many of us are raised in that kind of way. It's more like go to school to make sure you can, get a job and have a retirement fund and all of that. Like, what you love to do is kind of on the side thing. It's kind of like do that as a hobby when you're off work. And so I really love that he kind of instilled that, like that belief that, like, no, do what you love. And I feel like I was going to ask you how at such a young age, like in high school, you really went inwards and thought, like, okay, if it's not acting or theater, what feels good? And you know what? I
Mhm.
think fitness feels better. Going to the gym in the morning feels better. And I feel like at that age, like that's such a skill to really have this self awareness, to start looking inward and being like, well, this feels better. So I'm going to follow this. Whereas I feel like today, we don't come across too many, younger people who are really attuned with their feelings to be able to follow that. And so I think it's really beautiful that you shared that with us and that then you're sharing it with others because you're so right. We do have everything within us, but it's also like taking that step back to really recognize how we're feeling because so many of us too, I feel, are cut off from our feelings. We don't actually really know what
Mhm.
it means and what the body is trying to tell us. Like, what is your take on all that? And what do you think? Do you think it was just like the way, the environment that you were raised in that allowed you to be so in tune with how you felt?
I feel like I was lucky that I did have, my parents divorced when I was younger, but both households that I grew up in, I was just lucky that I did have parents that kind of guided me that way. So I hate to say luck, but it is. I was blessed to have that, path kind of steered around me
Mm-hmm.
because not all of us, or sometimes we look we want answers too deeply, or we look too big, where sometimes it's just as simple as when I was, in high school and I just started running, like literally minutes at a time, but I had stayed up partying and had smoked all day the day before. So I'd be on the Canada Games complex track, like literally wheezing, got to 3 minutes, and be like, oh my God, I'm done. I'm like, oh, I don't feel great because I know I could probably do better. And so luckily, with the right guidance, I also knew it was just as simple as that. Like, Nat, don't smoke as much the day before. You're probably going to feel better and you might be able to run in 5 minutes instead of 2 minutes. So does that make sense to say sometimes it's good to go deep, but sometimes it's just like sit and listen for a minute and be like, oh, hey, it's right in front of you. What do you
Mm-hmm.
want to do? It's there. And I am lucky that I was able to like see it and see it early enough that I took the right paths to get me to where I am now, and to
Mm-hmm.
be able to also have that taste of what it felt like to not be on the right path so I can understand that. Because I think that's important too, to be able to relate with people and talk to people. I know what that was like. I know what that felt like. Are you ready to listen? Are you ready to feel those feelings? That's another piece of it too. And maybe I just was then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ready is like a huge component, right? Because if we're not ready, then we're not going to be open to be able to receive it. And I love how you're saying that it doesn't have to be so deep. We don't have to go so deep. And I feel like sometimes when we think about like, oh, being in tuned, it's like we need to, have like half an hour to an hour of our days like meditation and really do the deep inner work. And like, yes, to a certain extent, but it's also the realization that like we're in this experience. We are in
Hmm.
tuned and we can choose to be in tuned at any time. And it could be something as simple as right in front of us as recognizing that, hang on a second, I'm wheezing. Maybe if I didn't smoke the night before, I wouldn't be. So let me try that and see how that
Yeah.
works. And it's right there. And it brings me back to when you were working out and you had that woman approach you and say, can you teach my mother or my grandmother? Or can you help her train?
Hmm.
And I think again, that's so beautiful because it shows like the alignment. Like you were there for that experience. You didn't have to go on this big journey. Like it was there. And sometimes the universe wants to align you with that next step for you. And it could really be that easy when you just open yourself up to it.
And you take it or you don't. And
Mm-hmm.
you know what? Sometimes when like listening to you right now, how many opportunities have been right there in front of me that I was not ready for and that I passed up or that I chose not to see or grab. It's kind of mind blowing when you think of it too, right? But that opportunity for me was like, all right, okay, like this is here. Let's try this and go.
Mm-hmm.
So not that we need to jump at every single opportunity, but sometimes going back to that simplicity of like, kind of felt good, cool, this lady's asking for my help. Let's see, let's give this a go,
Mm-hmm.
right? And back to that like decision of like running for 3 minutes, knowing, okay, this feels good, but I know it could feel better if I didn't drink gin all night and smoke cigarettes all day,
Mm-hmm.
right? I also feel that I was lucky enough to like know that I didn't need to change everything at that moment. And that's what now with my clients in the past and moving forward, we're not always searching for like big dramatic life changes. So at that moment, I didn't say to myself, Nat, you're not going to party anymore. Because I was like 18, 19 years old. Of course I was going to party. I just said to myself, you need to cut back to be able to run more. So how about instead of 5 cigarettes, you're going to have 4? And I'm lucky that was my approach. And now that's a way that I like to help clients is saying we don't have to do all or nothing. We don't have to totally revamp your life. Let's just start with one tiny little change, one tiny little movement and move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that for me, that was smoking, drinking, and fitness, trying to balance the two. But what does that look like for someone else in a different situation?
Right. Yeah. Small actions, because it's really the consistency over time. It's not the big action that we can't sustain and continue. It's what can we
Hmm.
start doing now to improve? And then once we get the hang of that, I'll go to 3 cigarettes or whatever it is. Right. And then just,
Yeah,
yeah, build from there.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, I love it all so much already. Thank you for sharing all of that. And then you touched on, okay, let's go into running because then you discovered a love for running. You've done multiple races, and that led you to doing the Boston Marathon in 2013. Can you
Hmm.
tell us about that experience?
Crappy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I even moving into this podcast, I knew this is going to be a topic. This is going to be something that you're going to need to talk about. And it just never gets easier. It was just
Mhm.
crappy. It was one of those, um, when you set yourself up for something really cool and big and you're excited about, let's say, like, I don't know, birthday party you're throwing and something happens and it goes wrong and then you're just like so defeated because it didn't go the way you wanted to. That's how, when I think back to Boston, that's exactly how I feel. It's ripped off. For so many years, I had worked towards this one cool goal and was so lucky to be able to have been able to do it. And then that just like, my victory, I guess, my celebration, got ripped off. So,
Were you able to finish the run?
yeah. So painting a little bit of a picture, when I actually qualified for Boston, my entire family came. They were all at the finish line, and luckily, I ran a good run and I was done. I was out of the finish line and into the finish corral area, which is, blocks big, like it's huge, or streets, I should say, city streets. Yeah, when bad things happened.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Uh, yeah, so I had crossed the finish line, but yes, I was still down on the streets.
Okay. When that happened, like were you with your family or were you separated? Like how did that go if you don't mind sharing?
So uh, when I was done, my whole family was with me. We were staying at a hotel that was actually at the finish line. It was like ridiculously convenient because the hotel was across the street. So, um, I don't know how anybody else is or how other runners are, but I refuse to wear a marathon shirt unless I've run the race. It's a weird quirk of mine. So when the run was over and my family had been outside for almost longer than I had been because they got their spots right at the finish line. So they were there for hours. They were all tired. And my kids, Chloe, who was only 7 months at the time, and my other daughter was only just over 2, they were exhausted. So my family went to the hotel room and me and my mom and my sister stayed down in the finish area because I desperately wanted to buy some t-shirts. Uh, so the three of us were down together and I bought my shirts. So when I say we started walking back, I cannot articulate enough that like the walk was literally like the length of the hotel. And when we were walking the length of the hotel to go back to our room, that's when things happened. So the three of us were down on street level, and the rest of my family, my kids were up in the hotel room. Um, and it's mind blowing the layers to to our world that we don't know about. And when the first one went off, there was this eerie, like, silence. Like this, all of a sudden, it was like all of these thousands of people that were around, just there was like this hum, quiet, like everyone kind of just stood there. And I remember my sister just like looking at me going, Nat, what was that? And I said, it's nothing, because my sister has dealt with anxiety a lot over her life. And I knew it wasn't right, but I didn't know what the heck it was. It sounded like trains colliding. So in my head, I was like, it's trains colliding, but I don't know why we're hearing that. And then so we just all stood there, and you felt like everyone around you was just standing there. And then we kind of like shook it off and goes, I don't know, let's just get back to like go into the hotel. And then I don't know, a minute to, I don't remember anymore, but it was minutes after or a minute after when the second one went off, that silence went to pandemonium. And people just started screaming and yelling, and we had no idea what was going on. But we just knew it wasn't good, or we didn't even know what direction this, but we knew it was close. Um, so we had just round the corner, and our hotel security doorman guy was standing there, and he wouldn't let us in the building. And that's where I say the layers are amazing. It's like how in that like matter of minutes and seconds, everybody went into like full blown action. It was wild. And he would not let us in, and I did not have a hotel key on me. I had, gone for the run, and my sister didn't, and my mom couldn't find hers. And anyways, by the time he finally let us in, like we were never able to get back out again for, I don't remember how long. Like if it was a full 24 hours or more. But as soon as we got in the building, we knew we couldn't go in the elevators. Like we didn't know, but we just knew that nothing was good because people were yelling, and I remember flying up the stairs thinking we just need to get to my kids. Like how am I not with my kids right now? And this young girl came flying around the corner screaming, "Tell me what's happening, what's going on?" And I just remember stopping, looking at her, and not unable to answer, and knew that this was not okay. So we got to our hotel, and yeah, I feel like I could keep rambling, but not at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. I mean, thank you for sharing that. Like, what an experience. Yeah. So you got to your room and then you were there for 24 hours, like with your family, where you couldn't leave.
Yeah, or more. I don't, sometimes it's funny how clear some things are and others not, but no one was allowed to leave the building. And the suspects were on the loose, right? So no one could come or go. We were in full blown lockdown. Um, and then we our hotel window looked down at the finish line, and another window looked down. Like we could look out and see. I just remember watching other runners. Like at the end of a race, you normally get like this aluminum blanket, sort of, this foil blanket that you can
Right.
walk around to stay warm. And I just remember seeing lots of runners and some by themselves, and like being even panicked for them, going like, what the hell must it felt like for them to be alone? Like I knew what it was like to have all of my key family members with me and my kids. That didn't feel good either because I knew like they're in a bad situation, but I don't know what it would be like to be alone either. So both were not ideal.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we just sat like basically nine of us, 11 of us, I can't do the math right now, but we all just were in our hotel rooms for a long time. And then slowly, I guess over the next 24 hours, when people were allowed to leave, but you weren't allowed to come back in. So I remember there was a point where the hotel said, now if you want to go, you can go. But like that's it. There's no coming back in the doors. There's no coming back. So at some point we had made the decision to leave. And that was hard. And then we left and got a plane and the whole journey from leaving. When I wrote my story down, um, my husband never read it. Nobody did. I was just writing as like journaling over the years. And when I published it, that was the first time he had actually read it. And he sat down, and when the book was done, he looked at me, he said, interesting how our perspectives are. And he said, it's really neat how you never mentioned at all us leaving the hotel and how we traveled home. And it was the first time I had realized that I blocked a lot of that out because a lot of that was probably like, it was scary. There's
Mhm.
army men all over. I remember getting now, after Andrew helped me like pull that out of my memory, I remember getting to the airport and like guns were turned on us and people are yelling and checking everything you had. And like, it was terrible.
Mhm.
So, um, yeah. Anyways, there's lots in between all that, but that's the gist of it.
Yeah. Again, thank you for sharing all of that. And it's incredible. It kind of makes me like almost in awe again of like your husband saying that perception and what our brain could block off from what we feel is so traumatic, right? And so having to do like that digging to searching what that experience was like leaving, whereas our brain sometimes we just won't remember it when maybe we're not at the like the point in our healing where we can actually properly heal it. It's kind of like it will keep things from us from our conscious awareness until we're actually able to process it. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it absolutely how you said it was well put. Um, at the very beginning of my book, I actually write, this is my perspective. These are my memories. And I make that known very loudly and clearly because all of my family, we have all walked away from this experience feeling differently, remembering differently, grieving differently, which was very hard for me because I was, very frustrated that like not everybody was as traumatized as me in ways. Sorry, some were, but we're also differently. Um, and how we remember things so different and some that we've blocked out. Like when mom and I talk and she's like, I don't remember that. And then I look at her, how do you not remember that? So I find it's mind blowing how our mind will do that and why. Why?
Mm-hmm.
But kind of like you said, like maybe we're not ready. Maybe it's not necessary for us to remember it either. And maybe it's a good thing. Um, right?
Mm-hmm.
I hope that answered your question.
No, it does. It does. Absolutely. Yeah, it's powerful. I mean, I feel like there's things about the brain that we're never going to know, right? And just the things that it's doing. And like you're saying, like all the perception, it's really fascinating. So let's get into your book because like you're saying, you described your experience from your perspective into your book. At what point after the incident and in your, healing, I'll call it, did you decide to start journaling? Was that something that you started picking up right away, or did it kind of take a little bit?
Yeah, it took a long time. Um, I, there's so many things that have happened in my life that could be like, well, that's crummy and I should be struggling with that I've been able to just move on from. And part of me is so frustrated with myself for not being able to fricking move on from this. And in lots of ways, I just keep struggling. So one day, years later, um, I definitely had my son. So definitely a handful of years later, I had remembered how much I loved journaling. And when I was younger, I always wrote people letters, left people notes, and journaled because it was just my way of like getting out what I wanted to say without interruption, sort of. Um, Making sure I got my message out or my feelings out. So one day I said to my husband, I don't know how to explain this, but I'm just going to start journaling my feelings right now and journaling my story. Not even just feelings, maybe just sitting down and writing. Uh, and he said, okay. So it started off simply with every Saturday night, my husband and I, since we've been dating, Saturday night has been like our date night. And when we started having kids, it became family night. It's very sacred to the Lehto household. People have stopped inviting us places on Saturday because they're like, all right, family night. Um, but for a long time, family night meant when my husband cooked dinner and the kids were just playing around, I would grab my computer and a glass of wine and sit down and just write whatever I needed to, from Boston to now, or even a little bit before. And I did that for a few years, and I did it in secret. Besides the five people that live in this house, no one knew I was doing it. But in the week when things would come up, I knew, all right, Nat, just write it out on Saturday. Like it became this like, I know I'm going to put it there. And that's what I did for years until I remember one day I was just sitting there going, okay, I think you need to be done with this right now. I think you need to step away. And that's how the whole journey of writing started. And I would only do it once a week. And it became a very special time for me and even the family. They didn't even really understand what I was writing about, which was also great because there was no pressure on writing. It was not, no one was going to ask me, how's your writing coming? I didn't want that. This was for me. This is what I'm doing for myself. And that's how it started.
Mm-hmm. And did you know it was going to be a book at that point, or were you just kind of writing? At what point did you think, I'm going to put this together as a book? And then I'm only assuming that there must have been like a lot of editing after to grab all of those pages and make it into a seamless book.
You know how at the beginning you said there's like a lot of pieces to like one answer, how
Yeah.
kind of the same with this journey, where separate to this whole experience, I've always loved reading. I'm a big reader. And I always had said, oh, I would love to write a book, but I don't know about what. So that was always this like tiny little nugget hidden. But when I started doing this, that wasn't the purpose. I wasn't setting out to write a book. But with all that said, I always wrote as if I was talking to someone, as if I was sharing it, as if I was going to give my story to the world. And near the end, I actually had the intention of, well, you know what I am going to do? I am going to get my girlfriend to read this over. I'm going to clean it up, print it, and give it to the 9 family members that were with me. It was actually just going to be a Christmas gift. So I gave it to one girl who I trusted her. Her name was Jess, actually, too. And I said, Jess, this is what I'm doing. Can this be a secret? Can you take a look at this? And she came back, I remember, days before Christmas, and she had it in her hand and she said, I think you need to share this with more than your family. And I remember staring at her going, what? She's like, I think you've got something here, and I think you need to share your story. And all of a sudden, it was like that little nugget I had hidden, and Like all of the pieces just came together and I was like, all right, let's do this now. Like it was another opportunity that I could have passed up and said, no, thank you. I'm going to print it, give it to my family, or no, that does feel right, actually. And from there, Jess actually helped me. She sat down at my kitchen table and said, okay, how do you do this? How do we get it from here to a printed copy on people's, nightstand? And she helped me at the beginning. We found publishers. Like found the direction I needed to go. I'm very big on local, very big on Canadian, and we ended up finding a Canadian company. Um, got an editor, went through the entire process of butchering your book in ways, in, positive ways, helping because I would sit down on one Saturday and be like, you know what? I want to talk about my son's birth, blah, 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 barf it out. And then another day would be like maybe 2 years before. It was all over the place. So they helped me clean it up in an order that definitely was more chronological and made sense. And next thing you know, and to add, Jess knew, but then at this point, only about three or four other people even knew that I was doing this because this to me was like, it was like another piece of me. I didn't want the pressure of the business side of it. I'd be like, how are you doing? What's going on? Like, I didn't want any of that. This was a whole other beast. So, no one even knew I was publishing a book until it was off, signed, ready. A copy was, like shown to me. Then I finally started telling people, by the way, I wrote a book, and everyone was like, "What? When?" Um, and then so that was the journey with that.
Wow. So when Jess told you that I think this needs to be told to more people, at that point, did you still give it to the 9 members of your family, or did you hold off and start looking at to publishing first?
I held off.
Okay.
I held off at that point and said, "Okay, if I'm gonna do this, we're gonna do it and do it properly." So, um, they were, yeah, I held off.
So did your husband even know that you were writing a book and going through all of this, or
He knew he was one because I actually self-publishing means that you need to pay. There's
right?
like payment on my end of things. This isn't oh, you wrote a book and you're like rolling in dough. It's the opposite. You wrote a book, so now
Yeah.
you're not rolling in dough. And I came around the corner. I said, okay, so I've been writing for the last few years. Um, I think I need to put it to print. And if you met my husband, he's the first guy to be like, okay, what do you need to do? And I told him, well, this is what I need to do and this is what it's going to cost. And he just stared at me and I'm like, I don't know how to tell you, but this is not a question to me. This is what I'm doing. And he's like, okay. So he at that point he knew I was writing, but he still had no idea about what until he had a copy in his hand and he was like, oh, okay, so I'm in this book. I'm like, yes, you're in this book. So it's all brand new to him. People had read it before he was able to finish reading it. So
Oh, wow.
he was not the first to read it.
Okay. Wow. And so, okay, so in this book, you share it's an autobiography where you share your experience and everything. And you also share some tips. If this is in your book, please do let me know because I've seen on your website where you're sharing like these tools that you have in your toolbox to help you maybe continue to move on after such traumatic experiences and really build that resilience. Is that all shared in your book?
In a way of not telling
Mm.
somebody what to do.
Hmm.
Because the biggest message that I hope people get out of the book is that we all of us walking this earth at some point will have crap. We might have more than one, and it's sometimes even piles on top of each other just because you have dealing with one thing doesn't mean you're going to be immune to dealing with others. Um, so nobody could tell you, one, that your crap isn't big enough to be sad about, mad about, scared about. Like that's a personal thing. And two, that there is a right way to deal with it. I get very worked up when I see, well, here, take these steps and you will be better. Do the following and you will see the light. I don't get that. Like, I don't see how that's valuable or true. Like, because sometimes when I do grab from my toolbox, Nat, like right now, when you asked me about Boston, you didn't know that under the table, I was literally ripping my fingers apart.
Mm,
I was digging my nails into my hand. But that sometimes is what I do to try to like keep myself focused. Doesn't work all the time. So
mhm.
sometimes I'll grab a tool and it works. And other times it doesn't. And that's okay. And I hope people will get from my book that there's no one magic way to heal, that these things, these incidences, this crap that will happen to us, they're a scar on us and they don't just disappear. But when you look at it, sometimes maybe sometimes you won't feel as sad or as mad or as scared. Sometimes, hopefully, over time, you'll react differently, but you'll know it's there, and you can look at it with a little bit more control, but not all the time, and that's okay. So we all have stuff, and we all have to find the tools that work for us with the mindset that they may not work all the time. So keep building up your toolbox so you can reach in for more when you need it. And it's okay to not be okay sometimes,
Mhm.
but keep trying. That's the biggest thing. Keep trying every day. Just keep trying. Because there's
Yeah.
many days, so many people. Oh, you're so resilient. Oh, you're so positive. Oh, I want to scream sometimes. No, I'm not. Sometimes I come home and lose it. And I'm not the epitome of like, oh, look at it. She did it. She can do anything. Like, and that's not the truth, and that's okay. But I am proud of the fact that I up to this date haven't given up, and I'm going to find ways each day to keep going. And when I do have really bad moments, it's okay. I'll deal with it, but I'm just a big believer in like go through the crap because on the other side there will be good. There just will be. And then you'll have crap again one day, but it'll be good again. Like you just need to keep moving forward.
Mhm. Absolutely. I love what you said at the beginning, kind of like the first thing that you said. And it's like, we could each be affected by different things and it doesn't matter. Like we shouldn't tell ourselves like, oh, she had it way worse, so I have no reason to be upset by this. Like we should not compare our little traumas or big traumas with other people because we're each individual and we're affected by different things. And then when we don't allow ourselves just to feel what we're feeling, then we bring on guilt and shame for feeling the way that we're feeling. And then everything is so much worse. And so it's really like we need to just be able to allow ourselves just to feel this way and not make these excuses of like, oh, like I know you had it worse, but like this is how I'm feeling. Honor those feelings. It's okay that you're feeling the way that you're feeling. And it isn't through like it isn't until you really accept them and honor them that you're then able to start to work with them to
Hmm.
get better and then to find those little practices that help you get through it. And different practices like you're saying could be different for every day. So I really appreciate that you're saying that. And I want to talk about, because the Boston Marathon happened, you came back and you were still working. And like you're saying, you're a
Hmm.
mom, you were having your business within you while you were writing a book. How was it to manage all of that?
That question comes to me often because lots of people will say, well, I don't get how you do that all. Like you're training for a marathon, you're doing this, you're doing that. I, without trying to sound really crazy, sometimes I don't know either. But there's no room for option. It's more like the book was something I knew I needed to do. I wasn't going to put it off. I had to start writing. And then once that ball was in motion, I had to see it through. I have to be a mom. There's no like pause. I am running a business. So I guess the answer is I don't know. I'm wired weirdly. And I am someone that likes being busy and I get in trouble for it often. But the more on my plate, then the more I start having to like literally put it in organizational piles. I can clean things up and keep going. A little bit of just a challenge that I have learned to balance. I don't know. I wish I had a really good answer because people do ask all the time, and sometimes it is just simply who I am is learning how to balance these pieces, and lots of them fall. Like lately, I feel like lots of them have fallen, but I prioritize. I guess that would be a good answer. Right now, if I tilted the camera to show you my floor, I'd be mortified because it needs to be vacuumed and probably 3 days ago. Um, there's not a dinner on the stove for tonight when we get home at 7:30. But the homework was done. But my event that I hosted the other day was put on. My training was like I just have learned to map it out, what's priority, and get it done. And the reality is that all of these things I do, I actually really like doing it. I love being mom. I love running my business. I love it. I really could not ever dream of doing anything different. The book is important to me. Sharing it has become now the next necessary because doing these talks, these moments with people that don't know me, I walk away and I always gain something. So I know that it's necessary for me in my healing. Everyone keeps asking me how come I haven't returned to a therapist, and maybe one day I will, and I know how great they are. It's just this is the tools I'm needing right now. Talking to people, sharing. Um, did I answer your question?
You did. Yeah, you did perfectly. I love it. And I love that you ended with saying that you love it. You love being a mom. You love your business and you love that you wrote your book and now you're at the chapter of sharing it right now. And this is the next step for your healing. Because as you were speaking in my mind, I was just like, well, it just sounds like you are very aware of your desires. And when you have that strong enough desire, it's almost like we have almost like these blinders on to other things that are happening outside of us. It's like with that strong enough desire, it's almost like a fact at this point. Like, this is it. This is what I'm doing. This is it. I'm committed. I made
Mhm.
that commitment and it's getting done. Like you're saying, you prioritize it because you have that deep desire. And another thing that was coming to mind is maybe you seem to be very keenly aware of your values as well, which is something that I help my clients like really get through to know what our values are. And kind of to go back at the beginning when you're saying, everybody knows not to contact you on Saturday nights because it's the Leto family. And like that seems like a really big value. And so I think there's so much power in like knowing that desire and like just what it is that you value. And then you prioritize those. Like that's
Mhm.
what I'm seeing. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, and I'm glad you are. And my reaction, and maybe it's our human like nature to be like, yeah, but I mess up. And yes, I
Mhm.
scream. And yes, I get mad that the laundry didn't get done. Like, I don't want everybody to think that I've like found the magic and like prioritize and things get done. And no, there's lots of like crumminess along the way. But to go back to what you just said, but I do feel that I'm blessed to know what is valuable to me at this moment, and I know that not everybody does. And I know that people might listen and struggle and be like, well, I don't know what my passions are. I don't have anything and that's okay too. That's okay. It's just right now I do know. So even though I'm not doing everything perfectly, I'm checking the boxes off that I need to check off. And I feel good about that. And that for me works. And again, this is never meant to be like, this is how you should do it. But this does work for me. So maybe, you know, someone at some point will hear me and be like, oh, well, that one thing Nat does resonate with me, and I'm going to give that a shot and that will work. Or maybe not. But um, yeah, I am lucky that I do have values that I feel proud about.
Mhm.
And that, yes, I am a human mother, hormonal 43-year-old that also snap shows in the background. But I will keep checking my box off and keep moving forward.
Yeah. Well, and you're accepting it. You're accepting where you're at. And like you're saying, this is the chapter that you're in. This is the chapter that feels good. And then you're also allowing that to change if it needs to change, right? I think just being like
Mhm.
really real with like who we are, just being these messy humans. And like, it's okay. Let's just accept it. Let's accept this phase that we're in. And then it's only through there that we can then keep moving forward. Because otherwise it's just resistance. And we're just making the whole experience that much worse.
Yeah. And I hope this isn't going on a tangent that is not necessary. With all that said, being real, because being real for me, being real and honest are like what what we should be for ourselves and everybody around us. I also feel for myself that, it's not also okay to like, okay, you acknowledge these feelings. I have these feelings. I'm not in a good place. But I personally don't agree with like turning off the lights and calling in sick and taking the day and not move. Like I don't know that wouldn't work for me either. You have to be real, you have to be open, you have to be honest, but then you gotta keep moving forward. There's days I love my job, but there's days where I might have heard the trains pushed together down in the city, and that sends me off for a bit, and I want to just go in the bathroom and cry, but I need to go teach a class, and then I'll walk in and I need to fake it. And I think sometimes that's okay too. I think we can go in and put on that brave face, and that's okay too. I'm not lying. I'm just choosing to be like, all right, Nat, yeah, you do also have to keep moving forward. Have your moments, cry, but don't let it stop you, man.
Absolutely. Well, and again, I feel like that's what really that's the importance and the power of like having that desire, right? Of knowing that like this is it, this is what I need to do, this is what I truly value. And so even though I'm feeling this way, I'm going to keep going because I really value this and like this is a priority. We kind of have to have that in our minds. Otherwise, it is all too easy just to be like, yep, gonna call it a day and go cry in the bathroom for the rest of the day, right? But like having that
Mhm.
desire, and this is why I talk a lot about the power of really finding that intrinsic motivation within that'll keep you moving forward. One, those moments inevitably show up, like they will show up because we're human. But when we have that
Mhm.
thing that's helping us, that we're like looking at, right, kind of like that beacon of light that we're going for, then we can keep moving forward. When those times get tough, it's kind of like that thing where we could just swallow and be like, okay, but I'm here for this.
Yeah. As you're talking, everything you're saying, I can't help but relate it to running a marathon.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because people always say, like, I don't get it. Why do you like running for like hours by yourself? And you're like hobbling at the end and you're like, ah. Um, and I always say it's because I know what the feeling of the finish line is. So as you're talking, it just made me think, well, yeah, it's like when I'm also because I'm running a marathon this weekend, so it's like in my brain right now of there are so many moments in that 26 miles where I am like, what the hell? Why am I doing this again? Why did I do this? Oh, my feet are sore. Oh, my hamstrings going on me. Or you're having all this negative self-talk. You can walk now. You could just walk. It's fine. Just walk. Oh, but then you won't get there. And then you know that feeling you have at the end. Like that's
Mhm.
so those pockets of like, but you know what the good feels like, or you know what that satisfaction will feel like. That's what keeps us going. It really does.
Mhm.
Is, Nat, put on a fake smile today. Go teach your class because you do know by the end that your students are probably going to make you laugh today, even though you don't want to. And you probably want to tell them all the screw off today or whatever, right? And you get there and you're, and I'm like faking it. And then by the end, I'm like, oh yeah, that's why I did this today. That's why
Mhm.
I didn't give up. So kind of that like finish line feeling of
Mhm.
I keep going, my toes are bleeding, my legs are aching, but I know what that feels like after, and that's what I want. So keep going.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I feel like there's so many analogies in life that we can relate to running. Like it's powerful. Yeah.
Hmm.
Natalie, I love this entire conversation with you and I love everything that you shared with us today. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with the audience today? And can you let everybody know where they can find you and find your book?
Thank you. One, thanks for having me. And it felt I forgot we were on a podcast because I thought me and you were just hanging out and chatting. Um,
I
you
love it.
know, everyone always says you're not alone in life or in things, and we really aren't. Um, and find in you what it doesn't have to be exercise. Like for me, it's exercise. The passion is exercise and fitness, but it's also playing my guitar. It's also cooking. It's also hanging out with my family. So whatever it is, and discover more about yourself with that little grain of happiness, whatever that little thing is. Um, Always finish strong. Start off slow, finish strong with whatever you do, because for me, that's so important. When you're in the marathon and you're like crawling at the end, that last 100 meters, you just pick it up and you fake it till you make it and you finish strong because that feels amazing. My book, it's called Like the Glide of a Dragonfly. You'll learn in the book why that title was brought about. Um, you can, for those of you that might be living in our city, they're all over Thunder Bay. Thunder Bay, Ontario is where I live. Lots of local stores like Fresh Air, Kitchen Nook, Inner Shine, George's Market, and more. But then for anybody who's not in Thunder Bay, it's on Indigo. You can catch it on Indigo, sorry, and Amazon. Friesen Press is the company, the publishing company that I went with, and you can get it through their website. So Indigo, Amazon, Friesen Press, and then any e-reader you have will also have it available for you too. So it's e-reader, soft and hard copy as well. And then my business within you. I'm in Thunder Bay. But I also do online, which has been super cool since COVID. So all of my classes, with the exception of the outdoor boot camps, I hybrid. And it's been fun because I have people from Kapuskasing to Ottawa to Florida who hop on and join us for Pilates and boot camps and strength and stretch classes as well. So within you is my business.
Hey, amazing. So fun. I love that you have that hybrid model. So I will be including all of those links in the show notes of this episode. So be sure to check it out. And Natalie, I can't thank you enough for everything that you shared today and for being here for this incredible conversation.
Thank you too, Jessica. Great meeting you and until our paths cross again. So thank you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, you're going to love being a part of my Feminine Initiate community on Facebook. It's a powerful space to connect with like minded online coaches, creatives, and entrepreneurs. a space to give and receive support, inspiration, and encouragement as we continue to deepen our positive impact. Join us on Facebook at Feminine Initiate. And remember, you're already doing it. I hope you take a moment to acknowledge and celebrate yourself for following your soul's calling. The world needs your unique gifts. I'll see you next week, friend.